Welcome to footballgameplan.com.
Where football makes sense.
Alongside Cornell Hunter, I'm Tyler Merkovich, and this is the 2019 preview for the Tennessee Titans. And Cornell 13-3. Jeff Fisher, great year last year, AFC South crown. Disappointing playoffs. They lose to Baltimore at home. He likes to manage the game with his offense, play a lot of defense. They were second in points allowed and second in turnover differential, and their rush game was 7th. This led their offense, led by the sensational rookie out of ECU, Chris Johnson.
Yeah, when you talk about the Tennessee Titans, it all starts with the ground game. Chris Johnson, Lindell White, they form a dynamic tandem. Johnson is a guy who can score from anywhere on the field. He's a dynamic inside runner. He finds those small creases, pops it outside, and there's not a defender in this league who can catch this guy once he gets to your linebackers. Then, once they get to the red zone, inside the 5-yard line, you know they're going to bring in big Lindell White. Here's a guy, if he gets a 2-yard head start, he's going to fall forward for 5. So that's why he always gets a lot of red zone touchdowns. That's a dynamic tandem, one of the best in the league.
One word to describe Johnson: electric. But let's talk about the quarterback now. Vince Young wanted out of Tennessee. He's griping. Is there a future for him in Tennessee? Because we know Kerry Collins had resurrected his career last year. And what's the situation over there?
The quarterback situation in Tennessee is one of the most awkward situations I've seen in quite some time. Vince Young is a kid who they drafted 3rd from the University of Texas from an amazing Rose Bowl performance. He came in 2006, highly scrutinized. All he did was win Rookie of the Year. 2007, followed that up with a 10-6 season, led his team to the playoffs. 2008, starts one game, gets hurt, they win that game, and you have the phone call, the 911, all the rumors, nobody really knows what happens, but Kerry Collins steps in, crafty veteran, he's very smart with the ball, they still stuck with the ground game. Collins finished 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the season, in a 15-game season. Those are mediocre numbers, average numbers, nothing to write home about. So the fact that Vince Young is solidified as the backup when he has an 18-11 career starting record, that just strikes me as very strange. I think that the Titans would be better served with Vince Young and his playmaking ability and the ability that he has to move out of the pocket and the things that he can do with his feet.
And in front of those skilled guys, protecting them will be a very underrated line anchored by the veteran Kevin Mawai at center. They picked up Jake Scott a couple years ago from Indianapolis, who's a great guard, and 2 underrated tackles, and David Stewart and Michael Roos.
And also, you have to look at the extension of that line, is that the Tennessee Titans like to go with 2 tight ends. Bo Scaife, they drafted a guy, Jared Cook, out of South Carolina. And the problem in Tennessee, in my opinion, is that their tight ends are better than their wideouts. They bring in Nate Washington from Pittsburgh, but we all know that Nate Washington was a 3rd receiver in Pittsburgh. So if they think that he's going to step into their squad and be a number 1, that just doesn't calculate well in my mind. And they did spend a first-round pick on Kenny Britt, the big guy out of Rutgers. Here's a guy you put in the game film. He looks physically amazing. The guy is a beast, but he drops a lot of balls. So that's my biggest question with him. I think over time he may develop into something, but expecting Kenny Britt to step in year 1 versus NFL corners and do better than he did his last year in college, that's a bit too lofty of expectations in my mind.
Defensive side of the ball, they lose defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, but you know Fisher will have his boys rolling on this side. Albert Haynesworth signs a big deal in Washington. They let him go, and they'll have 2 young tackles to replace him, but they got Kyle Van Der Bosch and Javon Curse on the end still. And that's another area of concern. Both of those guys are getting up there in age, and I want to go back to what you said. There's no way you can replace a guy like Albert Haynesworth. When you lose him, you're going to feel the impact of losing a guy like that. So I look for the Titans to struggle a bit on the line this season, because a guy like Albert Haynesworth, no matter who you draft, no matter who you bring in from free agency, they're not going to be Albert Haynesworth. It's Tony Brown, and they used 2nd-round picks in Derek Marks, and you know they're hopefully just makeshift to make up for that production at D-tackle.
And that's the thing. You can always count on potential, but potential can't replace production. And Albert Haynesworth is a guy that produces. So that is an area of concern. I think they may be fine, because I do like the guy Marks out of Auburn. I think he'll have a, decent, he has the potential to come in and be successful, but Albert Haynesworth, I'm sure all of the fans in Tennessee are going to miss him dearly.
This is probably their leader at linebackers last year. He's made it known, Keith Bulluck.
Yeah, I still like Keith Bulluck. Keith Bulluck is a rangy guy. Here's a guy that loves to tackle. Here's a guy that, as far as I've seen, every time I put in the film, if an intercept comes his way, he makes the play. So he's their only significant playmaker. You have Tulloch and guys like that, but none of those guys are anything to go hoopla crazy about. I think they still need some youth and a bit more playmakers at the outside linebacker positions.
When it comes to the secondary, you got 4 weapons.
Yes, I love the Tennessee secondary. Jeff Fisher has put together one of the best secondaries in the league. The guy, Cortland Finnegan, all he does is make plays. Then you have a crafty veteran like Nick Harper. You have 2 premier safeties in Chris Hope and Cedric Griffin. Those Tennessee secondary playmakers all over the field. You still, as we mentioned, you still have the reliable Bulluck at the linebacker position. But overall for their defense, I'm just concerned that the absence of Haynesworth will allow teams to start pounding them and doing the type of things that they couldn't do against the Titans last year.
Well, as we all know, there's 3 facets of football: offense, defense, and don't forget, special teams.
Yeah. And on special teams, the Titans also have to replace Chris Carr. Here's a guy who was a phenomenal kick returner, and I look for this guy to step up. Chris Davis. He was a first-year player last year out of Florida State. He has the agility, the burst, and the type of shiftiness you need out of a punt returner. And we all know that the Tennessee kicking game will always be consistent. So overall, I think they won't have the any top-notch type explosive plays on the special teams, but this kid Chris Davis out of Florida State, I really like him. He's always this close to breaking one, and I expect him to win that starting job as the punt returner.
AFC South, Indianapolis came on really strong last year. Jacksonville struggled. They're trying to get better, and a team coming on, the Houston Texans. How is Tennessee going to defend their AFC South?
Well, I really believe that when you have a smart coach like Jeff Fisher, he wins consistently. He keeps a good team. When you have a great ground game like you do, and knowing that he has a dynamic player like Vince Young at his disposal if it comes to that. So at some point during the season, I see the Tennessee Titans having another breakout year. I predict them to finish second in this conference behind the Indianapolis Colts.
That's the Professor Cornell Hunter. I'm Tyler Merkovich, and that is the outlook for the Tennessee Titans 2009. For more of your NFL team breakdowns, visit footballgameplan.com/NFL.